When the late great Steve Riley said about W.A.S.P, that's not W.A.S.P anymore, it's just Blackie with some great musicians, or Johnny Rod said basically the same thing, it got me thinking, is W.A.S.P W.A.S.P? What's going on, everyone? You're watching Sight Sounds Flavors on YouTube, sightsoundsflavors.com. If at any point in time you like the video, smash that like button. Please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, and leave a comment down below. There's a lot of bands that only have one original member, and that one original member happens to be the lead singer. One classic example, and they sold more or less the same amount of records as W.A.S.P. W.A.S.P only had 2 gold certified albums. I mean, they were not multi-platinum, although I thought they were, but they're not, because I'm looking at the numbers. Now, maybe they didn't apply for platinum certification, but they were with Elektra, if I'm not mistaken. So that seems like, I don't know. But they had at least 2 gold certified records. And the band I'm going to compare them to is Faster Pussycat, which had at least 1 gold certified record, if not 2. And it's just Tammy. I mean, there's no other member in the band except for Tammy that's an original member. But nobody ever questions whether or not it's Faster Pussycat. They don't say, well, you know, because Brett's not there, or Brent, excuse me, isn't there, or Eric's not there, or Greg's not there, that's not Faster Pussycat. Nobody ever says that. Danny's been with Tammy for 15, 20 years. Chad's been with Tammy 15, 20 years. Christian's been with Tammy 15, 20 years, if not more. And all the guys around Blackie have been with him much longer than the late great Stephen Riley, much longer than Johnny Rod was, much longer than Randy Piper was, and probably a little bit longer than Chris Holmes was with him. Now, Chris Holmes was with him for a long time, but I don't think Chris was ever in command. I don't think Randy was ever in command. I don't think Steve Riley was ever in command. I don't think Johnny Rod was ever in command. So I know the first record showed all 4 members of the band, and then after that, the second record was just Blackie, but I don't think that that really came as such a huge shock to anyone. It might have come as a huge shock to Chris, but, you know, to me, I would be very interested to see what the contracts for W.A.S.P look like. I don't think that each member had a 0.25% interest. I think Blackie had pretty much the whole interest, but who knows? Who knows if Chris ever owned a part of the name of W.A.S.P, or if Randy did, or how it worked. But the other thing is, very, very few people will out and out criticize Blackie. I know Johnny won't do it. Steve Riley didn't really do it. Randy didn't really do it. And Chris is probably the one that maybe comes the closest to doing it, but he doesn't really do it either. Could it be that Blackie still controls the money? Could it be that Blackie may still bring some of those guys back for a reunion, or maybe those guys think that there's a chance of that? I don't think there is. But the reality of the matter is that, to me, there's no sense for Blackie having a solo, because W.A.S.P is Blackie, Blackie is W.A.S.P. It's the same thing as Motorhead. You know, nobody ever said, oh, well, you know, because Phil wasn't in the band, you know, or Fast Eddie wasn't in the band, it wasn't Motorhead. If Lemmy was there, it was Motorhead. Same thing with Faster Pussycat. If Tammy's there, it's Faster Pussycat. Same thing with W.A.S.P. If Blackie is there, it's Faster Pussycat. Excuse me, what am I saying? If Blackie is there, it's W.A.S.P. I don't think that you need to have Chris or Randy or the late great Stephen Riley or Johnny Rod. Do I think it makes for a better package? Yes. Do I think it'll make the fans happier? Yes. Do I think it'll sell more tickets? That's debatable. I think with Chris Holmes, yes. I would say yes. The other guys, I don't know. I don't know that anybody in 2024 really cares if Johnny Rod, you know, is in the band or not, or if Randy Piper's in the band or not. A lot of people probably confuse Randy Piper with Rowdy Piper from the WWF. I really don't know. I mean, if you look for Randy Piper online, you'd be hard-pressed to find a Wikipedia page for him or many pictures of him. A lot of people just don't know who he is, which is a crime, because he was instrumental, no, well, pun intended, in the early formations of W.A.S.P, and quite frankly, was with Blackie even before W.A.S.P. And he's a huge powerhouse of a musician, and he's also a producer, and he's got a lot of things going for him. But will he, you know, will his presence lead to W.A.S.P selling more tickets or getting more downloads or selling more t-shirts in 2024? I don't think so. And the same for Johnny Rod. Now, Chris Holmes is different though, because Chris was part of WASP for so many years. And if you watch The Decline of Western Civilization, the metal years, Chris's role there in the pool, guzzling vodka with his poor mom watching on, and she was drinking too. I mean, that, Chris Holmes has name value. He's got people recognize him by his picture and by his voice, and he also had a pretty good solo run. And I would say Chris Holmes would be the exception, but would his presence dramatically increase ticket sales? That is where I really don't know, and that's where it's really kind of up for debate. So at the end of the day, you kind of have to do the business of it, and for Blackie, I don't know that having any of those guys really helps with the business. Now, you may say it'll make the fans happier. What about that? Well, that is a consideration, but is it worth the money? Is it worth the aggravation? Now, mind you, Chris Holmes is not in the category of a Vinnie Vincent with Kiss, where he's sued WASP like 30 times or something, but he has sued WASP, and Blackie feels like he's been paid adequately and doesn't have a reason to be suing the band. So there's animosity over that. There's also, I believe, a documentary that featured Chris where it kind of painted Blackie in a bad light. So I don't know that those guys are necessarily on the best of terms. Now, I've listened to a couple interviews with Randy Piper. I would think that Randy and Blackie would have better ties than Blackie and Chris, because Randy basically bit his tongue, and didn't even talk about Blackie's relationships with past members of the band. He didn't even want to speculate because, he just didn't want to go there. Whereas, Steve, when he was alive, actually took some pot shots at Blackie, not maliciously, but in his mind, he was simply sharing historical facts. But I'm sure that Blackie probably didn't appreciate that. And Chris, Chris has sued Blackie. Now, whether or not it was a legitimate suit or not, that creates tension and animosity. So, again, we're talking about a situation where maybe those guys are not on the best of terms. When Chris got sick, Blackie did post on social media that he wished him well, but a lot of people have pointed out he didn't call him, he didn't physically visit him. But then again, that might go back to the fact that these guys maybe aren't friends. And so then, you have, kind of like this bad blood, this history, and then you got to like put that on one side of one part of the scale. And then on the other part of the scale, it's this questionable difference that'll be made if he's even part of the project or part of the tour or not. Because then, I mean, if it's just a negligible amount, it doesn't really inspire you to deal with a lot of the BS over here. And so that's why I think that these guys have never, that's why I think that Blackie's never brought Johnny back. And I don't even know what happened between Blackie and Johnny, but in Johnny's interview, he's like, let the past be the past, which suggests that maybe there were some issues there. You know what I mean? And Johnny's talking about how, Blackie wanted him to play a song in a certain key, and that Johnny played it the way that he wanted to, not the way that the band wanted him to. And he laughs about the fact that it made it to the record. Well, that is funny, but imagine how that makes Blackie feel. Like 20, 30 years later, come to find out that this guy did what he wanted to do and not what he was told to do. And remember, Johnny was a hired gun. So, it's great for the interviewer, it's great for the interview, it's funny for us, the viewer, but to Blackie, who's a perfectionist, it's probably like, you know what I mean? Like, I give this guy the opportunity to join a major band with a major record label after the band that he was in basically got canned. King Cobra got thrown off Capitol. And this is how, so again, you really, really have to be careful how you do these interviews, even 20, 30 years later, because, what could be a great soundbite could also mean that you don't ever work with that person again, because I guarantee you Blackie wasn't laughing. If Blackie heard that or saw that, he wasn't laughing, because he told the guy how he wanted it, and the guy did it how he wanted, and he snuck it in the record. And now you can't undo that. So, but is WASP? Absolutely. Because all you need for there to be WASP is Blackie Lawless. All you needed for there to be Motorhead was Lemmy. And all you need for Faster Pussycat is Tame Me Down. Peace.